What on earth is propitiation?
I'll make my own decisions. What a stupid thing to say. Lord, I need you every day.
Mine is secret. Mine is secret. The sun and the moon and the fish.
Piggybacking off of Monday's video about forgiveness and Sunday's sermon, which there's a link in Monday's video about that, let's talk about propitiation. Another word we can use is atonement. We can also say appease or pacify. Webster's Revised Unabridged Dictionary defines propitiation like this: the act of appeasing the wrath and conciliating the favor of an offended person, the act of making propitious. That which propitiates atonement or atoning sacrifice, specifically the influence or effects of the death of Christ in appeasing the divine justice and conciliating the divine favor. The International Standard Bible Encyclopedia says this of propitiation, which is another way to say that. The word is Latin and brings into its English use the atmosphere of heathen rites for winning favor or averting the anger of the gods, or in our case, God. In the Old Testament, it represents a number of Hebrew words, including derivatives which are sufficiently discussed under atonement, which we'll look at in a minute. In the Septuagint, hilasterion is the term for mercy seat or the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, which was sprinkled with blood on the Day of Atonement. It is employed in exactly this sense in Hebrews 9:5, where later versions have in the margin the propitiatory. God loved us and sent his Son to be the propitiation for active mercy concerning our sins. The theological implication here is this: the basal idea in Hebrew terms is that of covering what is offensive, so restoring friendship or causing to be kindly disposed. The Greek terms lack the physical reference to covering, but introduce the idea of friendliness where antagonism would be natural, hence graciousness. Naturally, therefore, the idea of expiation entered into the concept. It's especially to be noted that all provisions for this friendly relation as between God and offending man find their initiation and provision in God and are under his direction, but involve the active response of man. Now, when it says offending man, it means us offending, not us being offended. Let's not get that confused. All heathen and unworthy conceptions are removed from the Christian notion of propitiation by the fact that God himself proposed or set forth Christ as the mercy seat, and that this is the supreme expression of ultimate love. Going back to Monday's video about forgiveness and what Jesus did, God had all the while been merciful, friendly, passing over man's sins with no apparently adequate or just ground for even doing so. Now, in the blood of Christ, sin is condemned and expiated, and God is able to establish and maintain his character for righteousness, while he continues and extends his dealing in gracious love with sinners who exercise faith in Jesus. we're going to talk about 4 occurrences that we see the word propitiation show up in the New Testament. In Romans 3:25, it says this: whom God hath set forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past, through the forbearance of God. Hebrews 2 says this: wherefore it behooved him in all things to be made like unto his brethren, that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to God, to make propitiation for the sins of the people. 1 John says this: and he is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. And 1 John 4 says this: herein is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us, and sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Do you see how this goes hand in hand with Monday's video about forgiveness? If we aren't willing to give forgiveness to people, then we have no right to claim the forgiveness that Jesus offers, the propitiation or pacifying of our sins. That's a huge thing to God. We're supposed to follow Jesus' example of forgiveness. Kafar. Kafar is to cover over, pacify, once again, propitiate. Genesis 32 says, let me cover his face by the present, so that he does not see the offense. We can also say cover over, atone for sin without sacrifice. And as always, thank you so much for being here today. Make sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and hit the bell, and I will see you soon. Maranatha.
Well, dear fish, these are the only pair I have. So blind and sacred, that old fish just talks to me. Could it be a case of heat stroke coming over me? 'Cause that old sun is a beating down, it must be 103. That big old fish began to talk again. So I asked the fish's name, he said, Sir William Scarnhow and Jim Bob the Toy. Would it be alright if I just called you Jim? And he was much obliged, so I sat down for a spell. I gave in to insanity, 'cause Jim had a story to tell. One enchanted night, the candle moon caught Jim on his right. Stardust and free, all he ever wanted to do was sing. So the man in the moon gazed at his well, Jim's angelic voice caught me by surprise. Sounded so sweet to me that tears they filled my eyes. So I asked dear Jim what price he paid to sing so beautifully. He said, I'm so glad you asked. Then he jumped up out of the water and he ate